Several new developments in South suburban Dalton today. First, the state comptroller has suspended some payments to the village because it has failed to fund.
The ongoing drama in Dalton, Illinois has captivated national attention, unfolding like a sensational soap opera rather than the routine operations of a small-town government. At the heart of this political spectacle is Mayor Tiffany Henyard, whose actions have sparked local outrage and global scrutiny. Her tenure has become a study in power struggles, controversies, and a shocking mix of audacity and theatricality, reminiscent of the most already political tales. From bold displays of unchecked authority to alleged attempts to humiliate her constituents, the story has taken one twist after another, each more astonishing than the last. Henyard's leadership, often compared to that of a diva on a global stage, has shattered political norms and left Dalton residents in disbelief and frustration, with many unable to comprehend her brazen, theatrical decisions. Critics point to Henyard's increasingly dictatorial style, marked by the suppression of dissent, claims of dominance, and unapologetic actions that defy logic. While some admire her resilience in the face of intense scrutiny, others argue that her actions reveal a disturbing lack of accountability. Allegations of retaliatory shutdowns, excessive spending, and an insular approach to governance have further fueled widespread criticism. The situation took a dramatic turn when accusations of police misuse emerged, with claims that Henyard used local law enforcement to intimidate rivals and silence critics, deepening the perception of an administration increasingly marked by power and control. Mayor Tiffany Henyard's leadership has increasingly focused on consolidating power rather than addressing the pressing issues facing Dalton. The town is now grappling with a dire fiscal crisis, further fueled by allegations of financial mismanagement, which have left residents growing increasingly vocal in their dissatisfaction. As the atmosphere in Dalton becomes thick with tension, many former supporters of the mayor now feel a deep sense of betrayal and disappointment. Henyard's leadership has turned into a cautionary tale about the fragility of small-town democracy, illustrating how abandoning transparency and service can have devastating consequences. Critics argue that her focus has shifted from effective governance to political survival, turning every decision into a calculated move to maintain control. And so, that's what happened here in South Arlington, too. This has cast Dalton as a symbol of what happens when ambition overtakes responsibility, as the town, once a quiet suburb, now finds itself embroiled in controversy. The people of Dalton are left grappling with the divisive fallout of a leader more concerned with securing her future than serving the community. The drama intensified when rumors of an imminent arrest warrant for Henyard began circulating, raising the stakes even higher. Speculation runs rampant about how a leader once hailed as a symbol of change has now come to the brink of legal disaster. This has only deepened questions about what this means for Dalton's governance and whether any trust remains between the mayor and the citizens she serves. Henyard's behavior has ignited national debates over power abuse, governance failures, and the critical role of community trust in democratic leadership. Amidst the scandal, Dalton's essential services have taken a back seat as the town remains embroiled in turmoil. Dalton is now grappling with financial strain, legal battles, and political turmoil, with city council meetings devolving into battlegrounds for finger-pointing and accusations rather than spaces for constructive solutions. With gratification and reputations for justice, and notwithstanding the prevalence of control, imprisonment deeply precarious, as investigations into her administration intensify. Rumors of an impending arrest warrant have turned the situation into a waiting game, with residents, journalists, and political observers speculating about the investigation's outcome and the future of her leadership. Public outrage has reached a boiling point, fueled by allegations of lavish spending, misuse of funds, and administrative chaos, all of which have further eroded public trust. What once seemed like a promising career is now unraveling, as Henyard's reliance on a tight-knit group of allies, including her former loyal assistant, Keith Freeman, becomes a central element in the ongoing scandal. Freeman, once a trusted confidant, has turned whistleblower, revealing his involvement in the administration's financial mismanagement and other questionable activities. His decision to speak out has provided crucial evidence that paints a damning picture of Henyard's leadership, The story of Henyard and Freeman's falling out has become a key plotline in the unfolding drama, with Freeman's revelations casting a long shadow over Henyard's carefully constructed image. Henyard's meteoric rise to power, which once seemed almost too good to be true, now feels like a distant memory. As Dalton's first female mayor, she symbolized a new beginning, young, ambitious, and determined to break barriers. Her early promises of transformative change resonated with residents eager for a fresh direction. However, as the old adage goes, things that seem too good to be true often are, and Henyard's leadership has taken a dramatic turn that few could have predicted. The adage, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, now seems to perfectly encapsulate Mayor Henyard's leadership, which once held so much promise. What was once an effective administration has now unraveled into a textbook example of corruption. The cracks in her leadership, once overlooked or dismissed, have become glaring and impossible to ignore. Early signs of trouble began with whispers about Henyard's lavish spending, including reports of taxpayer-funded indulgences like luxury SUVs, first-class flights, and expensive dining. Despite the growing discontent among residents, Henyard pressed on, confident that she could control the narrative and avoid scrutiny. She even hinted at plans for a second term, believing her charm and political maneuvering could cover up minor issues. However, Henyard's dependence on Keith Freeman to manage the more opaque aspects of her administration would ultimately become her downfall. As suspicions about financial mismanagement grew, Freeman's role became central to the escalating scandal. Freeman, once her loyal ally, had shielded her from public criticism, but as his involvement in questionable activities came to light, so did the unraveling of Henyard's control. The first major rift occurred when Freeman, once a close confidant, distanced himself from Henyard and eventually became a whistleblower. This shift marked the beginning of the end for Henyard's seemingly unassailable political position. Freeman's decision to speak out has transformed him into a central figure in the unfolding drama, with his claims of mismanagement, extravagant spending, and dishonesty providing the evidence needed for investigators to launch a formal probe into Henyard's finances. The whistleblower's revelations have tipped the scales in a scandal that now threatens to topple Henyard's administration. The growing revelations, combined with Henyard's initial silence and subsequent public attacks on Freeman's character, have only intensified the controversy. Her attempts to shift the blame onto Freeman, claiming his actions stem from personal grievances, have done little to stem the backlash. In fact, her refusal to take responsibility has only strengthened the perception that she is more focused on self-preservation than on the well-being of the community she was elected to serve. As the investigation into her administration continues, Henyard's once loyal supporters are now turning on her, disillusioned by her lack of accountability and the mounting evidence of corruption. Dalton, once a peaceful suburb, now finds itself embroiled in turmoil. What began as a promising leadership opportunity has spiraled into a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and ambition. The people of Dalton, who once placed their hopes in Henyard's leadership, now grapple with the consequences of misplaced trust and mismanaged resources. Public confidence in Henyard has plummeted to an all-time low, with residents feeling betrayed by the person they once believed would guide Dalton to prosperity. Her bravado, once seen as a sign of confidence and determination, is now met with disdain. Henyard's refusal to admit fault or offer solutions has only worsened the perception of her administration as one governed by arrogance and self-interest. Despite the mounting evidence of corruption and mismanagement, Henyard continues to frame herself as a misunderstood visionary, unfairly targeted by disgruntled employees and political rivals. Yet, with each new revelation, her credibility and political future slip further out of reach. Henyard's credibility continues to erode as her refusal to take responsibility for the growing scandal has led many to believe that she is either unwilling or unable to meet the demands of her office. The drama surrounding her administration now seems to be reaching its inevitable conclusion, with the weight of public dissatisfaction, financial strain, and legal battles closing in on her. For the people of Dalton, this situation has become more than just a political crisis. It is a reflection of failed leadership and the dangerous consequences of unchecked power. As Henyard's tenure unravels, residents are left wondering what the future holds for their town. Will they be able to reclaim their community from the whirlwind of controversy, or will Dalton's descent into chaos become a permanent part of its history? The situation in Dalton remains fluid, with no clear resolution in sight, leaving both residents and observers to ask one pressing question: what happens next? As the investigation into Henyard's actions intensifies and the legal consequences mount, the answer may soon become painfully clear. Keith Freeman, once the shadowy backbone of Dalton's administration and Henyard's loyal right-hand man, is now proving to be the decisive factor in unraveling her once impenetrable house of cards. For months, Henyard, the central figure in this drama, appeared untouchable, projecting authority and a carefully crafted image of leadership. But as cracks began to appear, it became clear that something much darker lay beneath the surface. Financial records, credit card statements, and other documents are now revealing the full extent of the mismanagement and corruption that had been hidden for so long. Freeman's cooperation with federal authorities has provided the crucial information needed to expose the truth, leading to the slow but inevitable collapse of Henyard's administration. A long list of extravagant expenses has come to light, revealing a disturbing pattern of abuse of power. For months, lavish spending was excused as part of Henyard's duties, with first-class flights justified as necessary for attending important conferences, high-end hotel stays presented as required accommodations for key summits, and luxurious dining experiences framed as opportunities to discuss critical issues. These expenditures were hidden behind vague descriptions designed to downplay their extravagant nature. But as the bills accumulated and were scrutinized, the pretenses began to crumble. Public funds that should have been used to help a struggling community were instead siphoned off for personal indulgence. What was once seen as ambition-driven leadership was exposed as reckless extravagance at the expense of the very people Henyard was meant to serve. Enter Keith Freeman, a central figure in this unfolding scandal. Freeman's decision to break his silence has transformed a local controversy into an existential threat for the leadership he once fiercely supported. Freeman was not only privy to every major decision, but he also reportedly enabled and, at times, facilitated the questionable actions now at the heart of the investigation. His cooperation with federal authorities has marked a major turning point in the drama, granting investigators access to a wealth of incriminating evidence, including emails, memos, and first-hand accounts that expose a pattern of corruption previously shielded by plausible deniability. Freeman's revelations paint a damning portrait of how public resources were diverted to fulfill personal whims. Private jets were hired under the guise of emergency travel, extravagant gifts were disguised as official business, and expenses were masked under the pretext of public service, all at the expense of the taxpayers who trusted Henyard to lead with integrity. Expensive retreats disguised as team-building exercises and lavish gifts presented as tokens of appreciation were all part of the web of deception that Henyard's administration wove. Freeman's testimony is now supported by a collection of incriminating documents, providing irrefutable evidence that what was once speculation is now undeniable fact. Those implicated are running out of excuses as the weight of the revelations continues to mount. The fallout from the scandal is reverberating far beyond the walls of Dalton's government. Residents, many of whom have witnessed vital public services deteriorate while the cost of living rises, are furious. Roads remain unpaved, schools are underfunded, and basic utilities are neglected, even as public funds were allegedly funneled into personal luxuries. The scandal has galvanized a community that feels deeply betrayed, leading to protests and escalating demands for accountability. Each day, the calls for justice grow louder. For Freeman, his decision to cooperate with authorities is as much about personal redemption as it is about seeking justice. In interviews and depositions, he has admitted to feeling complicit in the deception, but now claims that loyalty has its limits. His move to speak out represents a dramatic break from his former ally and signals a shift in the balance of power. Legal experts have noted the extraordinary nature of the case, as it is rare for such blatant disregard for financial transparency to provoke this level of public outrage and investigative scrutiny. Authorities are working around the clock to analyze documents and conduct interviews, building what they describe as an airtight case against those involved. However, the ultimate question remains: will justice be served in time to salvage the reputation and functionality of a deeply shaken community? As the legal battle intensifies, attention is turning to the future of Dalton and the possibility of recovery from this scandal. The clock is ticking, and residents are left wondering whether the damage can be undone or if the consequences will be permanent. The broader implications of the scandal raise critical questions about how such blatant misuse of funds was allowed to continue unchecked for so long. What oversight mechanisms failed, and who else might share responsibility for enabling this culture of corruption? The unfolding case is not only an indictment of one leader and her inner circle, but also a sobering reflection on the vulnerabilities inherent in systems of power that prioritize personality over accountability. Freeman, once a trusted ally, has reportedly begun revealing critical information to authorities in exchange for leniency, painting a damning picture of the operation under Henyard's leadership. His revelations are unraveling what was once a tightly controlled operation, shaking the very foundation of her administration. Predictably, Henyard is scrambling to deflect blame, claiming that Freeman was the architect of the questionable financial decisions. She paints herself as an inexperienced leader, unfamiliar with Dalton's governance processes, alleging that she blindly followed Freeman's guidance. It becomes increasingly difficult to sustain this narrative. Freeman, once Henyard's loyal right-hand man and the trusted deputy at the heart of her administration, has now turned the tide against her. His decision to cooperate with federal authorities has proven to be the critical turning point in what was once a well-orchestrated, seemingly impenetrable political empire. Freeman's revelations are exposing a scandal that has reached a boiling point, shining a harsh light on lavish spending and corruption at the highest levels of government. Henyard, the mayor of Dalton and once an untouchable figurehead, has watched helplessly as her carefully constructed image of leadership crumbles. At the heart of the scandal are her reckless financial decisions and the use of public funds for personal indulgence, with Freeman's testimony now driving the final nails into the coffin of her administration. The financial decisions that were once cloaked in ambiguity, high-expense trips, personal luxuries, and the questionable use of public funds, have all come under intense scrutiny. A 5-day trip to Austin, Texas, for example, is now exposed as an extravagant vacation charged to taxpayers under the guise of an official conference. Henyard's explanation for these lavish expenditures, pleading ignorance, now seems increasingly implausible and desperate. This excuse has been widely dismissed, raising significant questions about her judgment and intentions. What was once perceived as a story of ambition and leadership now appears as a tale of reckless indulgence. The real intrigue, however, lies in the disintegration of Henyard's once ironclad political empire. As of 2018, Henyard is one of the most respected brands in the world, and it is one of the most successful in modern times. Those who had been her most loyal allies during the height of her power are now reportedly turning against her, creating a cascading effect where former confidants and key players in her administration are distancing themselves from the fallout. Evidently, this new rule had them encroaching on the territory of her home, and Rand just didn't know what to do with it. Whispers are growing that others in her inner circle, many of whom may have also benefited from her time in office, are now cooperating with investigators. This suggests that Freeman's revelations are only the beginning and more damaging information could soon emerge. Freeman's cooperation with authorities has proven to be the spark igniting this crisis. As a key figure in Henyard's administration, Freeman had direct access to critical decisions, financial records, and transactions that are now central to the investigation. His credibility as a whistleblower is difficult to dismiss, given his prominent role in the administration. Freeman's narrative sharply contradicts Henyard's attempts to deflect responsibility. Sources close to the investigation claim that Freeman portrays Henyard as not only fully aware of the financial mismanagement, but as actively participating in orchestrating it, adding further weight to the case against her. Henyard, portrayed as a micromanager deeply involved in every major decision, stands accused of orchestrating questionable financial transactions, including personal trips disguised as official business and lavish spending that enriched only a select few. One of Freeman's most explosive claims centers on the misuse of public funds for personal enrichment. Early documents released hint at extravagant spending patterns that, at first glance, appear excessive. However, the deeper issue lies in the systematic nature of these alleged misdeeds. This was not a one-time lapse in judgment. The evidence suggests a consistent pattern of behavior where funds meant for public infrastructure, social programs, and community initiatives were diverted to fund Henyard's personal luxuries. Meanwhile, projects were delayed, social services underfunded, and vital community programs sidelined. Henyard's spending ballooned under the guise of official business. The implications of Freeman's revelations are far-reaching. Insiders suggest that a domino effect is underway, with Freeman as the first whistleblower, prompting others to come forward in a rush to protect themselves. Henyard's investments has exceeded $30 billion in security-guarded construction during the pandemic, Rono said. This growing list of cooperating individuals is seen as a treasure trove of actionable intelligence, with each new whistleblower providing more corroborating evidence to strengthen the federal case. This makes the question of Henyard's culpability more urgent than ever, as investigators piece together a web of corruption and deceit. As the investigation intensifies, bigger questions begin to emerge. How far does the corruption extend? Will Henyard face criminal charges? Who else in her circle is implicated? The scandal is no longer just about Henyard. It is about an entire administration, once shielded by power and loyalty, now being exposed for its systemic abuse of public trust. The fallout threatens to reach much further than just Henyard's political career, casting doubt on the integrity of those around her, and the institutions that allowed such corruption to fester unchecked appears to have been compromised. At its core, what's clear now is that Henyard's grip on power is weakening by the day, and the public is losing patience. The residents of Dothan are understandably angry and disillusioned. For years, they have watched their communities stagnate. Roads are in disrepair, schools are underfunded, and basic services are deteriorating. Meanwhile, they are now discovering that their taxpayer dollars have been used to fund Henyard's lavish lifestyle. However, the public outcry has erupted, with protests and town hall meetings becoming forums for citizens to voice their frustration and demands accountability. As these demands grow louder, Henyard remains defiant, framing herself as the victim of a political attack. But this narrative is beginning to unravel. As more details come to light, Henyard's attempts to shift the blame onto others are being met with increasing skepticism. Her public statements, designed to portray herself as an innocent bystander caught up in a codependency complex, are failing to resonate with the public. Even those who once supported her are questioning her leadership. The image of a defiant mayor desperately trying to avoid responsibility is stark against the backdrop of a collapsing administration. It's becoming clear that Henyard's strategy of passing the buck will no longer work. One of the most glaring aspects of the scandal is the overwhelming arrogance that Henyard has displayed despite serious accusations and an increasingly vocal public. She continues to act as if she is above reproach, while the people of Dothan grapple with crumbling infrastructure and rising crime rates. Henyard has been using her office to indulge in luxury and comfort. Expensive SUVs, $47,000 trips, and $25,000 credit card charges for personal items are just the tip of the iceberg. Henyard's personal photographer, paid $3,400 to document the mayor's life, epitomizes her blatant disregard for public funds. The most troubling part of all this is Henyard's inability to recognize the profound betrayal her actions represent. While Dalton residents struggle, Henyard has been focused on maintaining her image as a public figure, surrounded by an entourage that helped keep her in power. Freeman's revelations, however, have peeled back the curtain, exposing the true nature of her administration. The people of Dalton are no longer willing to accept her excuses. They are demanding answers and accountability. Henyard's rise to power also warrants scrutiny. Before becoming mayor in 2021, she had a history that raised red flags. In 2016, she was arrested for criminal trespassing and vehicle charges, an incident that, while minor, hinted at a pattern of questionable behavior. Despite this, she successfully ran for mayor, presenting herself as a young, ambitious leader ready to bring change to a struggling community. However, it seems the change she brought was not for the benefit of Dalton, but for her own personal gain. Under Henyard's leadership, the financial situation in Dalton has deteriorated. The village is now burdened with millions of dollars in debt, largely due to her lavish spending and mismanagement. Special services have been neglected, and the once vibrant community is now in a state of crisis. The village's coffers are nearly empty, with little to show for the millions in taxpayer money that have been spent. The situation has grown so dire that federal authorities are now investigating Henyard's activities, signaling that the full scope of the scandal may be far more damaging than previously imagined. The Attorney General's office is imminent, and an arrest warrant is reportedly in the works. As more people cooperate with federal authorities, Henyard's house of cards is starting to collapse. The question now is whether Henyard will face justice or manage to escape the consequences of her actions. Will she navigate yet another scandal, or will her empire finally come crashing down? Only time will tell, but the people of Dalton are demanding answers. What do you think? Will Henyard face justice or find a way to avoid it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.